Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And we've got a D&D lore video. Yeah, we decided to do it in this style so you can see our faces. And to be quite honest, we could have stuck all the fancy pictures, but sometimes even I think that you're almost like too many flashing pictures and it just, you feel like you're going to have a seizure from it. And I don't think that sometimes flashing through so many images so many times a second is healthy for people's retinas.
Yeah.
So this way you see our faces, you see us discuss through it, and it's a simpler style of video that's a little easier to edit and cut. So, actually I'm supposed to be taking the secondary role here, but this humanoid is slightly taller than a human. It has gray skin, a furry body, and a head like hyenas with a reddish-gray mane. Here's a good picture. I really like this picture. Gnolls are hyena-headed evil humanoids that wander in loose tribes. Most gnolls have dirty yellow or reddish-brown fur. A gnoll is a nocturnal carnivore, preferring intelligent creatures for food because they scream more. Okay, that's not very nice. Gnolls tend to think with their stomach, and any alliances they make, usually with bugbears, hobgoblins, ogres, orcs, or trolls, often fall apart when the gnoll gets hungry. They dislike giants and most other humanoids, and they disdain manual labor. Well, who doesn't? I'm joking. Actually, let's discuss just that bit.
They seem like pleasant folk.
Yeah. For the most part, like, when it comes to playing as a gnoll, I've actually tried to bring in to play as a gnoll quite a few times, but every campaign always ends within or gets discontinued and you do it after 2-3 sessions. And I love playing as gnolls. They're fun. You can do so much wild stuff with them. But I don't always like making them cannibals because I find cannibalism fairly disgusting.
And it is on the list of things that can be a little uncomfortable at a table.
Yeah. But that said, when you're playing an evil one, yes, I have played an evil gnoll. And what happened was, all right, we need this contact. Where's Joe's character? Well, I'm currently eating at the diner, and are you eating the guy? I hadn't thought of that. Because the guy was at, I think, the tavern. Now I'm at the tavern. I'm like, I'm eating. So, are you eating him? I hadn't thought of that. No, that's not what I was intending to do. Then I forget who it was, but I think that one of the players told the DM, roll the dice, so that we roll the dice to see whether or not I'm actually eating their contact, and it turns out I was. I was not trying to do that. Then I was just told, just lean into it, Joe. So I lean into how much of a horrible monster I am, and I even offer some of the food to the other player characters, and it was just funny. That's where I did not intend to be evil. My character got warped into being a villain, but everybody had a good laugh. And I just remember giggling and going, oh my God, I didn't intend this.
You needed to eat at the same table as the contact. Hopefully the quest got underway.
I forget. I forgot. That one got discontinued shortly thereafter. I don't remember much of that. Now, bugbears, I don't remember playing too many campaigns with those. Hobgoblins, they're always a mainstay. Ogres, yeah. Orcs, yeah. Or trolls, yeah. Basically, these are creatures of evil. Now, hyena folk are something that I really do like, and I think that there's a lot of role-playing opportunities with them. There is. But, for one thing, even when they're evil, I want to understand the society a lot more. So, looking at these notes, I want to know more. Now, 3.5 was to later expand on a lot of the lore and whatnot. But I think from what I've looked up just in passing, it seems that Pathfinder in 5th edition actually expands even more on gnolls, trying to bring them into, I think, as a main race. And I think that this is actually a case where the players and fan base were right, because this is come on, look at him. He's cool. This is a cool looking character. Yeah, it's a great villain, but I think this is a case where the players and fan base kind of said, we want more. And you know what? Wizards of the Coast said, Sure, okay. This is popular. You lean into what is popular. Okay, on va continuer. Now, Gnolls like to attack when they have the advantage of numbers. Who doesn't? Using horde tactics and their physical strength to overwhelm and knock down their opponents. They show little discipline when fighting unless they have a strong leader. At such times, they can maintain ranks and fight as a unit. While they do not usually prepare traps, they do use ambushes and try to attack from a flanking position. So they try to use tactics. Because of its shield, a Gnoll's modifier on hide checks, untrained, is -2, which means Gnolls always take special care to seek favorable conditions when laying ambushes, such as darkness, cover, or some other form of advantageous terrain.
They're hyenas.
Yeah, very good strategy. A tribe of Gnolls is ruled by its strongest member, who uses fear, intimidation, and strength to remain in power. If a chieftain is killed, the stronger member of the tribe fights to be the new chieftain. If these combats take too long or several combatants die. Where is it? I lost my place. Take too long or several combatants die. Oh, yeah. The tribe may break up into a number of bands that go their separate ways. So, thus was created Metallica. I'm kidding. I couldn't resist that one. So they break up into smaller bands like Metallica or, I don't know,
Backstreet Pups.
Genesis and whatnot. I just had a funny image of a Gnoll version of Phil Collins. Or a Gnoll trying to sing Two Worlds, One Family. Probably Two Worlds, One Meal. Sorry, this was not supposed to be us making fun of D&D. This was supposed to be us seriously discussing lore and whatnot, but it's just hard to... This is the regular D&D thing. The problem is in D&D, you imagine it starting off like you're the Fellowship. You turn into King Arthur and his merry men, or the Round Table from Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail. Gnolls revere the phases of the moon, but most tribes have no true clerics. Okay. A band or tribe includes as many non-combatant young as there are adults. Gnoll lairs are fortified surface encampments or underground complexes. And Gnolls which this suggests that there is a certain level of civilization. Real quick. Gnolls take prisoners for use as slaves. Well, duh. And any lair will have at least one slave for every 10 adults. Slaves, usually humans, orcs, or hobgoblins, suffer a high attrition rate because of the Gnoll's appetite. What, are they eating all the food? I'm joking. They actually are. But their special patron is the demon lord Yenogu, who looks like a gaunt Gnoll. Most Gnolls serve and revere Yenogu rather than worshipping a deity. Now, this is where I think that the idea of Yenogu is pretty interesting. We can maybe later in the month get into a bit of the horror story that is his origin and how he came to the Gnolls. I think as Yenogu is a pretty interesting character in of himself. That being said, them having slaves and mistreating them, this kind of does make sense, given that, well, they're monsters for all intents and purposes. And Gnoll characters, Gnoll leaders are usually rangers. Gnoll clerics usually worship Erenthal, deity of slaughter. I imagine also Yenogu. A Gnoll cleric has access to 2 of the following domains: chaos, evil, trickery, or war. Favored weapon, Morningstar. Gnolls as characters. Relentless hunters. What am I thinking? Gnoll characters often begin their adventure... I'm thinking of dinner, that's why. I'm joking. I had to crack that joke. Begin their adventures by tracking a quarry into the world of humankind. There they take up the role of bounty hunters and mercenaries. Makes sense.
Gnolls possess the following racial traits: +4 strength, +2 con, -2 intelligence, -2 charisma. Size medium. A Gnoll's base land speed is 30 feet. Dark vision and whatnot. Yeah. And languages are typically automatic language, Gnoll. Bonus languages are common, draconic, elven, goblin, and orc. Now, as far as character entries go, I think we kind of did that with the one Gnoll who became your first generation character in the Roman campaign's follower. Where you saved his life and we had a all but life debt with him. You liberated him from slavery as well, from a group of slavers who caught him. But the problem is, when we got to Rome, he basically became a gang leader and ate some of the competition, and just proved himself just the most disgustingly annoying, like incompetent in some ways, drunkard and gambler, where he gambled away most of his money. He drank a ludicrous amount of booze and caused endless amount of trouble and a few gang wars, and somehow found himself tripping and falling into being a gang leader.
Eventually, my character essentially decided, okay, I'm going to be your accountant. You get this much a month.
And he still managed to find a way to screw you over.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that he then married another Gnoll, a head of a Gnoll gang who's female. So he lived happily ever after. But he was such a nuisance. And I deliberately made him a bit of a nuisance. But at the same time, there were times when we needed an inciting event for some sessions in some parts of the campaign. So I used him. So somehow he just became the dumbest Gnoll on the planet. And the most annoying. But I think the players liked him because he was just used as almost a butt monkey.
A butt monkey, sometimes a contact in the underworld, sometimes used to intimidate other groups.
But typically, you guys had to rescue him sometimes because you got him to trouble. Or you had to go in and the other gangs were threatening warfare because he disrupted the delicate balance on the streets and amongst the gangs like the Aventine and whatnot in Rome. And, he was just always the problem. But when it comes to Gnoll characters, they're usually a bit of a problem because, well, they're hyenas. But I believe I originally, like the thing is, my idea for the Gnolls was that, because I basically did, for my world, I have the idea of, you have the four main directions of the world. You have the north, which is kind of Scandinavian. You have the west, which is basically west. You have the south, which is much like the real world's version. Because I like to bring in a lot of mythology and folklore from the real world into my world. That doesn't mean, I follow all the D&D stuff, I think, and all the classes and whatnot. And, of course, the Orient is Oriental and whatnot. But I remember at one point concocting the idea, why not just base the Gnolls in the Orient off the Mongols? I mean, the Mongols were cannibals. The Mongols were horrible. Now, today's Mongolians look pretty cool and chill and fun to hang out with, but back in the medieval period, Mongols were not anyone's friend. So they'd be the perfect model upon which to base Gnoll culture. And the idea was that Gnollish culture would be based off of the culture established by Genghis Khan. So this is what I tend to use real-world cultures as inspiration for some of my ideas. So Mongols were the perfect inspiration, as said, for Gnolls. And that's at least within the medieval period. Now, in the ancient antiquity of sorts, I use a mixture of Gnollish culture as described from D&D and kind of what we know of Xiongnu culture and a bit of Mongol, just a tinge, and you get the Gnollish culture of most areas and pre-medieval of sorts. Because I do think that there should be an ancient period and a medieval period. You shouldn't just have your boring, I say boring, but let's just do Forgotten Realms and just your standard fantasy world and whatnot, which all looks the same. Just shake it up. Make your world unique. That's what I think. Every D&D world should be different. Now, for example, Dragonlance Krynn as a D&D world is very different from Greyhawk, and they should be. You should have a different feel. Now, if you homebrew up a world, it should be very different from, say, Dragonlance's Krynn, or Arda, or the Hyborian Age, and so on. But Gnolls are ultimately very fun race. You can eat the competition, you can cause all sorts of trouble, but typically you actually go out looking for trouble.
I am actually surprised that they set up the Ranger as the favored class for Gnolls, and not the Barbarian.
Yeah, I know, the Barbarian would fit better.
Yeah, and even the stats of strength, con being boosted, and intelligence and charisma being lowered.
Fits better with Barbarian.
Yeah, with Ranger, if you're talking about a physical Ranger.
Maybe, but Barbarian would still suit better.
Yeah.
I would actually highly recommend people go for Barbarian with this, or Fighter. Oh my gosh, can you imagine playing a Gnollish Knight? You're playing against type there. Actually, if there's a single, like, Gnoll, just hear me out. A single group of Gnolls in one country which have started to civilize and become like a barony or something, or a duchy, and you have a growing knighthood there, that would be scary. You have a lot of potential for darker knights or blood knights of sorts, but you can also play it straight with a, possibly, slowly but surely, this area's Gnolls are becoming more chivalrous, and that would be very, very, very cool. I'm just shooting an idea. But on the other hand, Gnolls are characters that, how shall I put it? You can play them to an extent as good, but that's trickier. They're typically going to be evil. And neutrality, I'm not sure that works with them. They should probably be of extreme nature. And I think that there's a lot of potential for a lot of great stories with Gnolls. I really do like them. Like I said, I have a very big soft spot for Gnolls.
Yeah, a spot that they can easily bite into.
But I also think that culturally, given that hyenas are more matriarchal, that maybe Gnolls, it makes sense for them to be more matriarchal rather than patriarchal in their society structure. As, you know, you got to base it off hyenas. Now, apparently they keep hyenas as pets, and it simply makes sense. Like, for example, you have, for example, orcs. They would probably be male-dominated. It would not make sense for them to be female-dominated. But Gnolls should be the reverse, because hyenas, just as, I don't know, dwarves, in terms of fantasy tradition, are typically more male-dominated. Makes sense. And, yeah, so this is a case where I don't know how most people structure their Gnoll societies. I typically go more female-dominated to be more accurate to animals. Inspiration, which is to say, les hienes. But anyways, tell us what you all think
Of that and of this video. And don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were the gods throwing a meteor at the earth.